When I decided to move to the old village house I inherited from my grandfather, I thought this rural life would bring me peace. The house was surrounded by tall pine trees and sat at the edge of the village, isolated from everything else. When I arrived, everyone in the village welcomed me warmly, but I sensed an odd tension whenever I mentioned the house. It was as if people were reluctant to discuss it. I brushed it off, assuming it was just in my head. The first few days went by quietly. I would fall asleep to the sound of crickets and spend my days wandering through the village, reconnecting with my roots. But on the fourth night, something happened that left me on edge. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a deep, murmuring sound coming from the walls of the house. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or an old house creaking, and I eventually drifted off. Still, I didn't sleep peacefully. The murmuring sounds seemed to hover around me. The next day, I mentioned this strange noise to one of the villagers, an older man. His face tightened with worry, and he advised me not to stay in the house alone. That house has been empty for years. It's not wise to stay there on your own, he said, avoiding my gaze when I asked for more details. That night, the same sounds returned around the same time. This time I heard faint, almost muffled sobs along with the murmurings. I woke up in a panic and decided I needed to find the source. I walked through the house, following the noises, which led me down to the basement. When I opened the basement door, a blast of cold air hit me. Inside, the darkness felt thick, as though something was drawing me in. I switched on my flashlight and began searching the dusty basement, filled with cobweb-covered shelves, old furniture, and items that hadn't been touched in years. Just as I was about to leave, I noticed a faint outline on the wall that looked like a small door, but it had been bricked up with stones. My instincts warned me to leave it alone, but curiosity got the better of me. I carefully loosened the stones one by one until I uncovered a hidden room. When I stepped inside, a wave of dread washed over me. Inside, there was an old bed, a broken chair, and a faded family photograph on the wall. I shone my flashlight on the picture and froze. One of the people in the photo was my grandfather. Beside him stood a woman I didn't recognize. Her face was blurred, but her gaze seemed fixed on me. Beneath the photograph, there was an old, handwritten note. "They left me here." I stumbled back out of the room, my heart pounding as questions filled my mind. Who was this woman? Why was my grandfather in a hidden room with her? When I returned to the village, I told the old man about what I'd found. He paused for a long moment, then sighed deeply and began to explain. He told me that, in his youth, my grandfather had been engaged to this woman, but they had separated. Then one day she disappeared, and no one had seen her since. The villagers assumed she'd been taken away or had moved to a distant place. But now I knew the truth. The woman had been here, hidden away in that room. For reasons I could only guess, my grandfather had kept her a secret, a mystery locked away within these walls. The old man looked at me gravely and said, "Some secrets are meant to stay buried." His words left an eerie weight on my mind. After that day, every time I entered the house, I felt as though her eyes were on me. I couldn't bring myself to open the hidden room again. Knowing that she had been trapped there with her suffering hidden from the world was haunting enough. I didn't stay in the village much longer. The dark secret of my grandfather's past lingered in the silence of the house, refusing to fade. Eventually, I left, never intending to return.